fluff free. In other words, it says that the reason we blow the shofar is to confuse the Satan. These customs don't make us look very well. And I'm pretty sure that the more rationalists in the world took it with a grain of salt. But that's what it says.
Rosh Hashanah, it's considered Yom Adin. Now, although it's not mentioned in the Torah is pointing to a certain notion that I've never heard mentioned before. In other words, where does Rosh Hashanah, or literally Yom Teruah, actually fall into the whole mix in the grand scheme of things? Well, like I always say, that all these mitzvot really make no sense if you detach them from the land. I mean, what's done nowadays, this practice called Rosh Hashanah, if you look deep into it, you'll see a few of the crumbs of its initial purpose. In other words, it's not a coincidence that Rosh Hashanah, Yom Teruah, predates Yom Kippur. And even the Chazal correctly understood it as Yom Adin, the day of judgment. Now, judgment for what? Now, being that these commandments don't really make sense outside of the land, while you were in the land, judgment for what? Now, for sure it wasn't for heaven or hell, which is somewhat what's taught today. No, it was a judgment to see if Israel was allowed to remain in the land. That's it. It sounds so simple once someone explains it to you. In other words, every year, the Almighty evaluated Israel, the nation's deeds. He weighed them out on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Teruah. Now, I have a video on how the notion of Rosh Hashanah came about, showing that there is a valid reason for it. Not a biblical reason, but it's more of a civil calendrical reason. But fine, I have no problem calling it Yom Teruah. But like I was saying, God, He weighed Israel's sins on a scale, pretty much, which is why throughout Jewish history, we hear Midrashim tell us about the white rope that would turn red if Israel's sins wasn't forgiven, and other ideas that were similar to that. But again, what were they being judged for? Now, the understanding is that if they were found worthy, they would be allowed to live in the land another year. And that's why it's followed by Yom Kippur, the day that the Almighty reset His counter, or reset the scale. I've always thought that's what Kippur really means. Apart from just covering, it's almost like a resetting. And that's it. Now, how did it get to what it is nowadays? That even Christianity and Islam ran with it. And Christianity and Islam didn't make up all these metaphysical concepts around it. They were initially Jewish. Jewish has later developed ideas in the Jewish world. But that's it. Once you view it like this, it sort of defangs all the scary metaphysical ideas that if you go as far as Christianity and Islam, it has to do with some final day of judgment where one either gets tossed into hell or rewarded with heaven. Not at all. Now, one could say that this is pointing to bigger things, although it's initially, yes, speaking about the land and whether Israel's allowed to remain in the land. Fine, but we shouldn't distort the message and say that that is in some way also authoritative or obligatory to believe. No, what's obligatory to believe is that Israel at this time, or really moving towards this time, like all the days of repentance, slichot, all these things predate Rosh Hashanah. In other words, the Almighty gave Israel an opportunity to make things right, not necessarily with Him, but with people around them, either other nations around them or other Israelites. If you stole, it's time to return and pay back. If you insulted, it's time to apologize. Now, it's no doubt that what we're living nowadays is called Galut Judaism, exile Judaism. This is why things really make no sense if it's not mystified. Everything legal gets mystified. Okay, there's the notion of the king in the fields. That, if not understood within the notion of living and retaining the land, kind of takes on some weird understanding, maybe sort of a corporeal understanding.
Torah doesn't say this for sure, all right? Okay, do what everyone else does, but know the difference. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle people who believe in that or compare it to Christianity. I just want people to know what's in the Torah and what's not in the Torah, okay? And if it's not in the Torah, you don't have to believe it. So much is built around what's not in the Torah. Like, I had a discussion today with someone who, his whole religion, and he's an Orthodox Jew, but his whole religion is built off of Midrashim. clearly no one's going to want to do anything with kavana, anything that seems mystical, if he feels that it's optional to believe. And this is just the way the human brain works. We have better things to do. So I don't think the average Jew has ever been confronted with that question. Is this belief or practice optional to believe? Is that one? Right? They're like, what do you mean optional to believe? This is just what we do. Of course, it's all lumped in together. This is why when people teach it, they teach like, oh, it's all given on Mount Sinai. And I know it's easier to do it like that. But in this day and age of people asking sophisticated questions about ethics and religion, I don't think that's going to fly.